Is this the most dangerous team in America? Probably not. But Pitt's playing really, really well right now. In an aftermath of a blowout win at the Peterson Event Center featuring one of the probably the best single game performances any of us have ever seen from a Pitt player, they're playing really, really well. And they're really dangerous. And I think the rest of the ACC, maybe even some pockets across the country, are starting to take notice. As well they should, because this team is not just peaking. They're peaking at the right time, and they're hitting some pretty high levels of play right now. Pitt's rolling through the stretch run. Let's talk about it here to get the week started on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it was a good weekend in the Peterson Event Center, certainly on Saturday night. It was a good weekend for Pitt. It was a good night for Pitt as the Panthers rolled over Louisville. Just a dominating win, 86-59, and obviously the standout story there was Blake Hinson. It's funny, like writing about the game, writing our three-pointers column yesterday, it was almost like we need to find something to talk about other than Blake Hinson. I mean, there's so much to say, but so much has been said and was said on Saturday night and throughout the day yesterday. I was like, do we even talk about Blake Hinson this morning on the Morning Pit? But of course, we're going to talk about Blake Hinson. How can you not talk about the guy who scored 41 points to help Pitt to a 27-point victory in the Peterson Event Center on Saturday night? But we got a lot to talk about around that game, in the context of that game, in the context of everything going forward for Pitt right now. Here on the Morning Pit, you know the deal. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's our Pitt video channel, or our video channel where we put all the Pitt video content. Our daily Morning Pitt videos like this one, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett get together for a little Pitt sports talk with you. Our live post-game show that we do after every road basketball game. We did one after every football game. We'll do one after every road basketball game, which means we will be live tomorrow night after the Wake Forest game. That's a 9 o'clock tip-off. Who's staying up? Not just to watch the game, but to tune in for the post-game show after the game. Probably going to start around 11 or a quarter after. Let's hope it's a nice quick game like that last, what was that last road game that went? Oh, the Virginia game. Like flew by. The Virginia game was like super fast. We were able to start right around 9 and get that thing done and jump right into it with the post-game show. Let's hope this Wake Forest game tomorrow night goes real quick too, so we're not up past midnight doing the post-game show. But we will be live right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com for that post-game show. You want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where all of our Pitt video content exists. And if you subscribe, you can turn on notifications so you get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live or every time we post new videos or any of those things, and you won't miss any of it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are talking about Pitt sports with other Pitt fans on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. It's the best online community of Pitt sports fans that you're going to find. And yeah, it's a subscription website, and our premium message boards are behind a paywall. But you know what? Like, I think that sort of creates a special subset of Pitt fans. Like, you want to talk to the Pitt fans who are really committed. I mean, it's these are people who are willing to pay for a subscription. They care about Pitt sports just as much as you do. They like talking about Pitt sports just as much as you do. And it's not always roses there. It's some ups and downs in terms of the conversation. But Pitt fans who are really serious about Pitt sports are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. So go check it out, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all of the Pitt sports news and conversation. All right. First of all, this guy right here, Blake Hinson. I created a meme yesterday, maybe my first. The scene in the one of the Avengers movies, I think it is. He's talking to the one guy, the one bad guy or bad god or whatever he is. He's like, well, I have an army. And Robert Downey Jr. is like, well, we have a Hulk. And I created a meme of Robert Downey Jr., but he's instead of saying, we have a Hulk, it's like the Pitt players are saying, we have a Blake. Because they have a Blake. And at this point, with the way Blake Hinson is playing, Pitt's never out of a game. I mean, he is on fire. And obviously he was on fire on Saturday night. There's no question about it. Final stat line, 14 of 24 from the field, 9 of 13 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, 41 points. Goes without saying that's a career high. Goes without saying that was a game high. Goes without saying that was a season high. And you probably would imagine it's a pretty short list of guys who have scored 41 points in a game at Pitt, and you will be right about that. That ties for the third highest total of all time. I think there's five. It was the fifth time, I think, that a Pitt player has scored 41 or more. Don Hennon set the school record for points in a single game with 45 back in 1957. Jamal Artis had a 43-point game, and I think Don Hennon had like 2 more 41-point games because he was pretty ridiculous as well. He was like the Blake Hinson of his day, except without the 3-point shooting. But Blake was unconscious. I mean, he was just unconscious on Saturday night. And what's remarkable is it's not like Blake Hinson has been playing, at a subpar level in recent weeks. I mean, like I've talked, I wrote in the 3-2-1 column about this. I talked about this a lot last week about how Hinson and Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe and Ishmael Leggett have been playing over the last 7 games leading into Saturday night. Because they're all like playing at a really high level, and Hinson the highest. You know what I mean? Hinson leading the charge in his scoring and production. But he obviously takes it to another level. When you score 41 points in a game, he had 27 in the first half. He took it to another level. And he's now, over the last 8 games, Blake Hinson is averaging 21.5 points per game. He's shooting 50.7%. Pause for dramatic effect. From 3. He's not shooting 50.7% from the field. He's shooting 53.6% from the field. He's shooting 50.7% from 3. And it's not a small sample size. In the last 8 games, he has attempted 69 3-pointers, and he has made 35 of them. Like, he's out of his mind. 9 3-pointers in the game on Saturday night ties the Pitt record for made 3-pointers in a single game. A record that Blake Hinson himself set at West Virginia earlier this season. He pointed that out after the game. He's like, yeah, it was my record, which is cool. But I mean, it was a dominant performance. And like, there's only so much, like I can't sit here for 20 minutes and just keep saying over and over, Blake Hinson was awesome. Blake Hinson was awesome. Blake Hinson was awesome. But Blake Hinson was awesome. Here's what was most remarkable to me about Blake Hinson's game. I mean, obviously, you score 41 points. That's what's most remarkable. But here's the thing. Pitt was down. Pitt started off, they were up 11-2, right? Great start. Exactly what you'd expect to happen. A little bit slow because that was like 5.5 minutes into the game and they only had 11 points. But they were up 11-2. Which is about what you would expect Pitt to be doing against Louisville. You would think as you get to the halfway point of the first half, they should be up by probably close to 10. And they were. 11-2 with 14.5 minutes left to play. But then they went cold. They'd been cold. And then they got colder, and Louisville heated up a little bit. And Louisville went on a 10-0 run and was up 12-11. After Louisville went up 12-11 on free throws, Blake Hinson hit a 3. To make it 14-12. Louisville tied it and then went ahead 15-14 with a free throw. After that, Blake Hinson hits a 3. Louisville hits a 3. Blake Hinson drives for a basket. Blake Hinson hits 2 free throws. I'm not skipping over plays here. Blake Hinson gets an and 1. Fede Federico gets a putback. Blake Hinson hits a free throw. Louisville finally gets a basket because at that point it's like 27-18. Louisville finally gets a basket. Then Blake Hinson hits a 3. Louisville gets an and 1. Blake Hinson hits a 3. Louisville gets free throws and a basket. Blake Hinson gets another bucket. My point is this. Blake Hinson took over the game. And for so long, we've talked about, this was like one of those classic tropes of like the mid to late 2000s, right around the turn of, the aughts into the 10s. Pitt needs that go-to guy. They need that go-to guy. And I think Pitt fans really locked into this because they'd seen guys like Dwayne Wade take over a game, or Kemba Walker. I felt like I was Jim Calhoun there for a second. Take over a game. And they said Pitt needs that guy who can take over a game. Pitt needs that guy who can be a go-to guy, who can just get a basket and lead the team and all this stuff. And I always sort of push back against that. I felt like it was too general. I mean, Sam Young could be that guy at times. DeJuan Blair could be that guy at times. There were games where Levance Fields took over. There were games where Brandon Knight took over. They had those guys at times. And even, Dwayne Wade didn't take over every game, or else Marquette would have been undefeated and won a national championship. I mean, like, we talked in those terms because you wanted to have a guy who could do that more often than the Pitt fans felt like they were getting. But what we saw on Saturday night was a guy do exactly that. There was a point. So if you go back even to like when it was 6-2, Blake Hinson hit his first three, his first basket. He scored 3, 5, 8, 11, 13, 15, 18 points in a row for Pitt. Not an 18-0 run. Louisville scored in there. 18 consecutive Pitt points. Like it got to a point after that and one, it was 24-18. And I said, Blake Hinson has scored Pitt's last 18 points. I mean, that's a remark. I mean, like that is literally taking over a game. And you get to halftime, Blake Hinson's got 27 points. Louisville had 27 points. Blake Hinson matched Louisville's point total in the first half. Blake Hinson at one point went on like an 11-3 run. Not Pitt went on an 11-3 run. After it was 15-14, Blake Hinson went on a 10-3 run. All by himself. That's what was most remarkable. I mean, like, obviously the shot making and the scoring and the 41 points and seeing history. I mean, that was one of the greatest individual performances probably most of us have seen from a Pitt player. I mean, there was the Jamel Artis game in 2017 at Louisville, which I had forgotten about. He was just unconscious in that game. But I'm not sure I've ever really seen anything like what Blake Hinson did. And we've seen some great individual performances. I was even going to do an episode of the Morning Pitt here about just, great individual performances and talk about like LaShawn McCoy against West Virginia or the Notre Dame game in 2008. Obviously, Aaron Donald in 2013 at Georgia Tech was a dominating, unbelievable performance. Jordan Addison, I think, in that Virginia game in 2021. Kenny Pickett had a bunch of games that year. Just like unreal, dominating performances where you just said this was amazing. And certainly we've seen those out of Pitt players over the years as well. But I'm not sure this one Saturday night is pretty close to the top. But it's not just the whole game. What really stood out to me was what Hinson was able to do when Louisville looked like it had some momentum, when Louisville looked like it might have a chance to make a real game out of this, and when Pitt maybe started to slip a little bit, possibly with something of a hangover from the Virginia game. Huge win on the road, admittedly on Tuesday, and you got an extra day off. It wasn't a Wednesday to Saturday break. It was Tuesday to Saturday, so you had a little extra time to put that one behind you. But a gigantic win on the road. You're starting to feel good about yourself. You've won 4 in a row. You've won 6 out of the last 7. Maybe you're starting to think a little too highly of yourself, which would be completely understandable because I think we're all thinking very highly of this team, particularly after that Virginia game. And so it looked like there was a little bit of a hangover there. Blake Hinson didn't let it happen. Blake Hinson didn't let it fester, and Blake Hinson didn't let Louisville get back in this game. He ripped out their souls and stomped on them, maybe ate them, maybe threw them up to the catwalk. Maybe he ripped out their souls and went up to the catwalk and threw them off the catwalk like this parachute drop thing they started doing the last couple of weeks. Apparently Heather Lyke was up in the catwalk. Blake Hinson took over the game, and it was a dominating performance, and it was the kind of performance that should have a lot of people concerned. I think Blake Hinson has been scary for the rest of the ACC for the last 2 seasons. I mean, the last 61 games, right? Because that was his 61st game at Pitt. He became, the 4th fastest to 1,000 points in a Pitt uniform by getting there in 61 games. He crossed over that number on Saturday night. He's been frightening for ACC opponents for the better part of 61 games. And so the rest of the conference already was kind of on note. They all know that Blake Hinson's the guy who can hurt them. But with what he did on Saturday night, I think it it goes to another level. It gets even more concerning. It gets even scarier. And other teams, other schools, other programs around the country have to be taking a little bit of notice of what's been going on at Pitt. Now, we're in our bubble here, right? We're all watching Pitt. We're all focused on Pitt. Is Pitt really one of the hottest teams in the nation? I have it written down. Pitt has won 5 in a row, of course. By my count, there are 22 teams in college basketball, in Division I college basketball right now, that are riding winning streaks of 5 or more games, including Pitt. So they're 1 out of 22. That's not bad. There are only 3 other Power 5 teams, high major teams. I don't want to say high major, and I'll tell you why in a second. There are only 3 other teams from Power 5 conferences that have winning streaks of 5 games or more right now. Arizona has won 6 in a row. They're all in the Pac-12, incidentally. Arizona has won 6 in a row. Washington State has won 7 in a row, and UCLA has won 6 in a row. That's it. And Pitt, having won 5 in a row. They're the only 4 Power 5 teams that I could see, and certainly if you notice another one, point it out to me. They're the only 4 Power 5 teams that I could find that currently have winning streaks of 5 or more games. So yeah, in that regard, they are among the hottest teams in the country. Now, there are quite a few mid and low major teams, and I don't really want to make that distinction because right now UConn has the longest active winning streak in the country. They've won 14 in a row. Is the Big East a mid-major conference in college basketball? I mean, technically, you've got your Power 5 if we're going to limit it to the Power 5 and call those the high major conferences, that seems mighty disrespectful to the Big East, so I think it's earned a little bit more respect than that. And then similarly, like USF has won 11 in a row. SMU has won 6 in a row. Are we calling the AAC a mid-major conference in college basketball? I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with that. So I don't want to say high major, mid-major, low major. So we'll stick with Power 5, although I've never entirely been comfortable with talking about Power 5 conferences in college basketball because, again, Big East seems like a power conference to me. The AAC is pretty close to it as well. Maybe slightly off the mark, but pretty close. But then those that, so I said there's 22 teams in the country with winning streaks of 5 games or more right now. I mean, you've got Arizona, Washington State, and UCLA. You've got UConn, USF, and SMU. But beyond that, it's like Merrimack has won 8 in a row. Southern from the SWAC has won 7 in a row. Grand Canyon has won 7 in a row. St. Mary's has won 13 in a row. What are some of the other big ones? I mentioned Merrimack. Colgate has won 11 in a row. Loyola Chicago's won 6 in a row. Grand Canyon has won 7 in a row. So, I mean, we're talking about mostly mid and low major teams here. Very few power conference teams, high major teams, Power 5 teams, whatever we want to talk about it. Very few of them have won as many in a row as Pitt right now. And so I think by that definition, Pitt is one of the hottest teams in the country. Are they the most dangerous team in the country? I mean, UConn has won 14 in a row and, defending national champs. I'd say they should get a little bit of respect. But I think Pitt is quickly becoming that team that national pundits are going to fancy themselves a smarty pants for saying, this is the team nobody wants to face. Because the reality is they're playing at a really high level right now. They're peaking at the right time. And they have got 4 absolutely deadly offensive weapons. Led by Blake Hinson, who's averaging 21.5 points per game over the last 8 games. But take nothing away from the other 3 guys. Bub Carrington over the last 8 games is averaging 12, 5, and 4. It's pretty good. And his points, 12.3 points per game, is actually down a point from what he averaged the 7 games before that. All these guys kind of dropped a little bit after Blake Hinson scored 41. He took up a lot of the scoring that hurt their averages. Jalen Lowe is averaging 13 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Ishmael Leggett, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists per game, 1.6 steals. He's shooting 43% from the floor. The freshmen are both shooting about 84% from the free throw line. And I tell you what else is starting to emerge a little bit. I'll tell you what else is starting to jump up for this team and creep up as a sort of a sneaky strength. It's Federico. In the last 8 games, Fetty's averaging 4.5 points per game. Nothing special there. 6.8 rebounds, though. with 2.3 of those being offensive rebounds and the other 4.5 being defensive rebounds. He's averaging almost 2 blocks per game. He's shooting just under 54% from the field. And yeah, he's shooting 40% from the free throw line over the last 8 games, but he made both of his attempts in the Louisville game. I think his defense is coming along. I think they're getting a nice flow and a nice rhythm with him and Guillermo Diaz-Graham alternating out there. But I think you're getting what you need from Federico right now in terms of defense and rebounding. You take whatever little bit of scoring you're going to get, maybe on some putbacks or something like that, the occasional pick and roll, although Guillermo's starting to look like a better option at that. But really what you need from Federico is defense, rim protection, and rebounding. Because you're going to get your scoring out of Hinson, Lowe, Carrington, and Leggett. I don't think there's any concern about that. They are an elite offensive team with those 4 guys rolling. So you don't need that. You don't need that scoring out of Federico. You need the defense and the rebounding. And that's what you're getting right now from him after a pretty long stretch this season where it didn't look like he was taking any steps forward. And I'm not going to sit here and say, boy, he's taking a giant step forward from last season. But he's playing much better now than he was earlier this year, which, again, is huge for Pitt. It's scary for other teams. Right now, the Panthers are 17-8 overall. They're 8-6 in the ACC. They've won 5 in a row, 7 of their last 8, and they have 6 games remaining. They have gone from a 1-5 record in ACC games and being next to last in the conference, and they were only 14th by virtue of having beaten the only other one-win team in the conference at that point, which was Louisville. So the only thing that was keeping them out of the absolute basement of the ACC is that they happened to beat Louisville for their one conference win. But they've gone from that, from 1-5 and 14th in the ACC to where they are right now, which is 8-6, tied for 4th, but holding the tiebreaker to get them into 4th place in the conference with 6 games left to play. They're rolling right now, and it's fun. It's fun to watch, and tomorrow night's game is going to be huge. We'll get you ready for it on tomorrow's Morning Pit, and like I said, we'll have a post-game show afterwards, so make sure you tune in for that. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com to get all your Pitt sports news and conversation. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm sure you enjoyed Saturday night. I hope your Sunday went well as well. Have a good Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll get you ready for Pitt Wake Forest here in the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.